West Australian, July 17, 2014. $300 billion black hole. Federal Parliament. Hockey looks at alternative cuts as budget measures blocked. Treasurer Joe Hockey has threatened to go around the Parliament to cut government spending as figures suggest the budget is facing a $300 billion hole. Opening a fresh front in his battle to get key budget spending cuts through the Senate, Mr Hockey said he had alternatives to the measures opposed by ALP, Greens, Palmer United Party and crossbench senators. Well, preceding the 2014 federal election, they had no economic vision articulated to the public or strategies, and they have not outlined any economic vision or strategies or alternatives, as Mr Hockey says. Also, in terms of economics, the government budget is one aspect of an entire economy, and in fact it's actually quite a small aspect of the economy. The vision ought to be to balance the budget first of all. It doesn't really matter how much you spend. What matters is, does the budget balance, and how do they gain revenue? Where do they gain their revenue sources from? So the spending capacity of the federal parliament is not the problem. The problem is for the federal politicians to secure new federal funding sources, and just focusing on government spending is not the entire. It's not how to build a powerful domestic economy. There has to be a much bigger focus on jobs and production of industries. Those are some basic economic concepts that they have never outlined strategies, Liberal or Labor, and even Palmer, about how to increase production of Australian-owned and made companies, businesses, organisations and industries, and also focusing on jobs for Australians. As long as people are working, they've got a job and somewhere to live and a reasonable level of income where they can support themselves and their families, then our economy will function very well. And the key has to be how to create more jobs for Australians, how to build production of Australian-owned and made businesses, organisations, industries and companies, and the production side of what's happening with the economy, and then securing new revenue sources for the federal and state parliaments, which I believe needs to be done through the banking sector. And the vision of fiscal integrity is balanced budgets, not surplus budgets. That's stealing from the public. There has to be a balanced budget. So if you have a $300 billion federal revenue, then you spend $300 billion, okay? And to the public, teach the public exactly how that funding is, where it's gained from, and also how it's spent. I did a video on my economic vision, and I wrote most of the details in the description of that video. It's a bit of an old video, but what I want to do is I'll just read through the description, and I won't elaborate on anything because otherwise it will take too long. So this is my economic vision for our society, for our nation, and this is how I believe we can create a powerful domestic economy for Australians, focusing on jobs. Effective fiscal policy, taxation and bureaucratic reform, with very low transactional bank tax equally on deposits and withdrawals to neutralise any negative impacts on investment or savings. And I would abolish all other forms of taxation in Australia except the GST, with 100% GST retained by the states. Effective monetary policy, complemented with fiscal spending. The current politicians have no monetary policy because they don't control the Reserve Bank. And the strategies I would employ are public expenditure investment through the banking sector, to create a parliamentary division of the Commonwealth and state banks to assist in funding public expenditure. And the Commonwealth Bank was created under two acts, 1945 Act and the 1947 Act. Ben Chifley created the Commonwealth Bank, and it can be done under the creating a parliamentary division of the Commonwealth Bank would only require amendments to current legislation and not actually a new act, although that could be created. Banking system reform, with banking regulation, recreate the Commonwealth and state banking system, Australian government regulated and guaranteed through fractional reserve banking. Federal Parliament to control the Reserve Bank and cap RBA rates, so for business and residential lending to keep it low, cost effective. increase of domestic production of Australian owner-made businesses, organisations, industries and companies, with a focus on jobs for Australians first, bureaucratic reform and production protections, legislative protection and economic grants, small business sector and community grants. Across our nation, I would establish a $50 billion a year annual grants commission for small business and local community organisations to create jobs and production on the condition that that funding is creating jobs for Australians. An economic cap on property lease charges for small business space across the nation, square meterage of the room, in commercial areas and shopping centres and industrial areas as well, to provide low cost effective business rentals, for 100% political funding to Australian owner-made industries, businesses, organisations and companies, not foreign companies. I would have a vision for increasing exports, better terms of trade, tariff protection for Australian industries that request it. If they request it, then my approach would be to provide every opportunity and strategy possible to provide that protection for that Australian industry, say wool industry or beef industry. Increase productive capacity, domestic production and export supply, Australian owner-made, primary and secondary industries and agriculture, mineral and energy production, manufacturing and retail trade. I would reform Centrelink to become the Australian Employment Agency with a job function to find jobs for Australians. As in the past, where we used to have the jobs boards on the jobs 20, 30 years ago, and their role was to find and create jobs for Australians, match up employers with employees. Now it's just a processing centre and it's totally useless. I would also create a prisoner release job program for Australians, because a lot of thousands of Australians are jailed and locked up because they're poor, they've got no money, nowhere to live, so they need jobs. We've saved taxpayer billions of dollars. That basically Liberal, Labor, Nationals, Greens politicians, they are killing off the poor and jailing Australia's poor. You know, it's a very evil practice. I would abolish 457 visas and invest in education and jobs for Australians first. I'd create one massive Australian car manufacturing industry with no other competitor to stand in its way. And I would invest in industrial projects like National Industrial Rail and Passenger Network, and the building of efficient and effective water catchment systems across our nation. I would eradicate foreign external debt by cancelling the debt. Say, talk to the hand, sorry we're not paying. That's how you cancel it. No more borrowing from foreign banks and corporations. No more selling Commonwealth state land assets and resources. No more reliance on foreign investment. No foreign ownership of Australian land assets, resources and industries. And I would do through the land gates, recreate our industries, resources and for production and jobs. I'll create a new act, a Commonwealth Act, the name of the Australian people, and take resources and put them in the name, the legal name of the Australian people, which means they're owned by the Australian people, they're produced by Australian people, and jobs created for the production of those resources in the ownership name of the Australian people, and they go into jobs and investment back into the community. I would pursue an economic cap on petrol and ethanol at $1.35 a litre for consumers, and secure the supply of petrol in Australia through the increased production of oil. And if anyone tries to compromise the supply of petrol in Australia, well, I would just take ownership of the petrol stations and employ Australians and make sure that it's done effectively. If we have an economic cap on petrol, $1.35 a litre, the only condition is the supply of petrol, and I think we need to look at increasing the production of oil production in Australian petroleum and how we can secure better supply sources. I would also put economic caps on telecommunications, utility charges and homeowner rates. I'd pursue that through the Commonwealth. And I believe that current and past Liberal and Labor politicians are globalist traders and they failed the economy. I would pursue my economic vision through constitutional provisions, Section 51 of the Constitution, Effective Management of the Economy, Section 81, Consolidated Revenue Fund, and Section 96 of the Constitution, grants to the states with conditions. So if I want to give teachers across our nation budgets, I could do it through Section 96 of the Constitution, on the condition that funds goes to the states, on the condition that all of that funding goes to the teachers for teacher budgets. And that wouldn't require the Senate to implement my economic vision. I think I'll leave it there.